to the panel session at the Danube Forum, the panel session which is dedicated to the clusters and cooperation and integration of EU and Ukrainian value chains.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. So there is at this very moment the very difficult situation in Ukraine, but I think geographical proximity of Danube is particularly important. I will start this event with inviting all the speakers. We have Director Boratyński from the European Commission, responsible for network and governance. We invited Vice Minister of Ukraine, but apparently there is something going on and he is not joining. We hope he will join us in the course of this session. And then we have the practitioners of clusters, Antonio Novo, the President of European Cluster Alliance. We have Alexander Jurczak, the President of the Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, and Gerd Meyer, who is actually the responsible for work package 8 in Danube strategy, and he's a long year practitioner as well in clusters. So without, thank you very much for having you on this. Anyone who is not, who was not able to join this session will receive the recordings of this session, including all Danube clusters. So let me start and invite Kuba Boratyński as a European Commission representative to express his view about what are actually perspectives for in this geopolitical context for further collaboration between EU and Ukrainian businesses. Kuba, the floor is yours, please. Kuba, if you can unmute yourself. So, thank you.
Yes, that actually shows that more than 2 years after COVID, we still make those mistakes. So good morning to everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here in this meeting of the Danube Forum. And well, we are now after 8 months of war of Russia against Ukraine. We have went through COVID, and I think these events, I would say, made the case for the EU industrial policy probably stronger than ever. Let me just recall, the green and digital transition, resilience of European economy, and competitiveness of European economy in an increasingly complex world. We well remember the problems that we have faced during COVID, now with the war. I mean, the question of resilience is absolutely critical for EU positions. We see that basically our security is at stake, the question of food, health, cyber security, all these areas where we may have potential vulnerabilities. And of course, now energy is at the top of the agenda. We see how Russia is weaponizing, the issue of gas supplies, but not only that, now it's basically directly trying to attack energy infrastructure of Ukraine, which is affecting Ukraine, obviously, but also what is sometimes less known. Ukraine is also an important exporter of energy to Europe, which shows vitality of its economy. Now, I think we have a very, I would say, intensive discussions in Europe across capitals in Brussels about how to react to the crisis. We have the most recent proposals from the Commission include a new emergency regulation, which I would say proposes as one of key measures, an idea of joint purchasing of gas, mechanism to limit the prices, new measures on transparent use of infrastructure, all underpinned by the idea that in these difficult times, it is actually the solidarity and coordination between member states that can actually really help us to go through the winter, and obviously also, to make sure that mid to long term, we can fully discard our dependency on Russia and basically be resistance to the blackmail that is being made. Now, I think it is very important, apart from these measures that are being taken now, that we related to gas market, to use of electricity, to imports of oil, that we also look more long term how to diversify our supply of critical raw materials, which are absolutely essential for the successful digital transition. One of key measures in that respect would be European Critical Raw Materials Act, which President von der Leyen, announced that we will, Commission will propose it next year. The first step within that initiative is for us to identify, which raw materials are absolutely critical, and then we would like to basically. That would be the first step, including also stakeholder consultations. And then, we would follow up with various actions aimed at making sure that we have reliable partnership with like-minded countries across the world. But we are also able to invest in mining, let's say, both inside Europe and in the immediate vicinity of Europe. Learning lessons from the crisis and trying to make sure that we would be ready to the next one. Also a crisis that we really cannot predict. Commission put on the table a proposal for single market emergency instrument that would be, a tool for us to be better prepared and better to respond. Now, this is, we see that basically our American partners are also taking, extraordinary measures that include notably, Defense Production Act. So anyway, we really need to think about partnerships, about defending our economic and political interests. And here we are, where, the cluster cooperation is actually coming and potentially playing a very important role. According to the survey that has been done by European Cluster Collaboration Platform, many companies across Europe are taking measures to increase our resilience. What they are doing in that respect, this is about indeed, training to improve skills of their employees. What we need, obviously, is to accelerate investment in research and development of new groundbreaking solutions that would allow us to basically react more swiftly. And it is very much about using automation, production processes, elements, let's say, of circular economy. Also, what is absolutely critical from the point of view of the vulnerability of the supply chains, that we actually regionalize, and if we don't source materials inside EU, it is important that we actually can source them, shorter geographical distances, and also with countries that we could rely on. So these are really quite, times of really profound change, and clusters for us are a great example of how, a solid network based on trust, based on actually experience of doing things together, can help us to go through the difficult times. So it is clear that, for that, we need to master the technologies of the future so that we are basically able to find relevant responses. We need to accelerate innovation, and I think SMEs are playing and should play important role in this regard. With this concept, with the, let's say, European concept of various alliances and industrial collaboration, that is not just about champions, but it's about indeed using the strengths that lie across, different ecosystem, different regions within the research community, within SMEs. We hope, to be making major progress in key areas for the future: data, chips, hydrogen, batteries, renewables. We have important assets in Europe. well-trained task force, highly skilled engineers. I mean, rule of law, quite, a solid legal and institutional framework, and all of these are the strengths on which we should build on. Now, if we look into the future, into what the clusters could do, so we see that indeed the clusters are the ones that can actually lead the change and scale up in times of the crisis. We've seen very positive experiences during the time of COVID. Now we see, and again, our great, respect and congratulations to our Ukrainian friends who have, in times of the war, who are moving forward with the European Clusters Alliance that have been set up in March. It is important that clusters can connect the dots, they can work with variety of stakeholders, be brokers for innovation, be the ones who understand where a successful investment can be done at a local and regional level, bringing also, let's say, the support of local decision maker, and and provide for in a way a glue, not just within the specific ecosystems, but also across the ecosystems. So I think all of this, gives us, I think, a solid foundation for, let's say, managing this unprecedented change. And I think that, this is also what we can do successfully together in the Danube region, and where we can actually involve also Ukrainian clusters. And we definitely, want to include our Ukrainian partners in the EU value chains, which is very much in line also with a very, I would say, strong commitment that the EU has expressed, first by obviously granting the candidate status to Ukraine back in June, but also if you have listened, to the State of the Union speech, there was basically a very explicit statement of our determination to provide, to make Ukraine part of the great success story, which is the single market, and and make the access to the single market as seamless as possible. So with this, thank you very much again for the honor of being in this meeting, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting and inspiring discussion. Back to you, Marek.
Thank you very much, Kuba, for giving this overview from the European Commission side. I think we plan to have the ministry. We don't have feedback yet. We know Kiev was bombarded, so I don't know what is happening, but we still are waiting. Maybe, but in the meantime, let me just turn to our cluster practitioners. And I will start with Antonio Novo, from the president of the European Cluster Alliance, to make a presentation, and then Alexander, and then Gerd, and then we can have a discussion. I think Antonio, thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Marek. I understand that you can hear me and see my screen. Thank you again. Mm-hmm. So. I wanted to share with you some global ideas about where are we contributing or working to contribute, and how we think that the SMEs integrated in the European clusters can create linkages with the Ukrainian ones, and how can we really strengthen our respective industrial ecosystems. So I wanted to start speaking about the EU Industrial Forum. This is the expert group that is supporting the development in a co-creation process of the industrial policy at the European level. We are one member, one of something like 75. There are 27 representatives, one for every member states, industrial association, civil society entities, and the Bank of Investment, and so on. And inside the EU Industrial Forum, there are 5 task forces. The every one of them is dedicated to a specific focus. The second one is related to the development of the transition pathways. And that is very relevant for us. We are, as cluster, we are working to contribute to the definition and the implementation of those transition pathways, the plans to make reality the priorities that the European Union has agreed with, green, digital, resilient. And the fourth one is also very relevant for the discussion that we are having today here. It's about cross-border and cross-ecosystem investments, and how that approach could contribute to our general growth. This concrete task force is coordinated by two entities. One is Digital Europe, and another one is us, the European Cluster Alliance. So we are really involved in reaching or working for the objectives that you can see in the screen. So identify and recommend areas of high potential for cross-border and cross-ecosystem investment, recommend policy measures, facilitate matchmaking of the different stakeholders, globally strengthen the European global leadership in addressing the sustainability challenges. So about us, the European Cluster Alliance currently joins 22 national associations of clusters, national, regional, and vertical networks, representing more than 90% of the European clusters. And we have representatives in the EU Industrial Forum, the European Economic and Social Committee, HERA, and other expert groups. You can see that we are covering most of the European geography, and I would say the full Danubian area or region. So we are very glad to be contributing to today's meeting and to work for the development of these regions. For general information, we have in the ECCP, in the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, we have 340 clusters registered in the different countries, plus the ones registered in Ukraine. That, if I am not mistaken, but Alex Yuka will correct me, are 35, something like that, okay? So there is a strong presence of clusters across the region. It's true that there is also a strong relationship between the potential of the economy and the number of clusters. There is, we receive information also of many other clusters created in Germany that are not contemplated here, for example. But anyway, it's I would say clear correlation between economy growth and presence of cluster. And when we speak about cluster, we are speaking out, in this case, cluster organization, meaning not only the geographical concentration of entities, of businesses and universities, technological centers, but also the organization of those concentrations in a way that there is a team working for creating or facilitating the and growing of those entities, those companies. You know that the European Union has identified 14 priority industrial ecosystems, and here you can see the distribution of those clusters between the different industrial ecosystems. It's evident that digital is the strongest one, but there is a strong presence of the health, mobility, transport, automotive, renewable energy, and I will include agri-food, ecosystem in the Danube region. We could think on first taking advantage of those that are very strong and very well organized now, but also to help those that perhaps are less represented and but are highly interesting for us, okay, for the EU, European Union. For example, we are, as ECA, we are trying to support especially the growing of the proximity and social economy clusters. And in that area, that there is a need for supporting the creation of those kind of clusters. There are real collaboration between entities on proximity and social economy, but it's not so usual for them to organize themselves on that collaboration. So we are working on it. There are also a strong representation of cluster in the industrial alliances in the Danube regions. You can see in the screen the distribution. And I wanted to review with you also why we think that clusters are strategic agents for drafting and implementing the European initiatives. So, first idea, clusters are key for the successful implementation and quick implementation of projects and investment. And there are clear references on how clusters are excellent bridges to the from the policy side and from the policy priorities to the European SMEs and large companies, or to even creating bridges between the different areas on the four helix. Clusters are also can help to properly allocate the funding for economic value creation. We are very effective, and that is critical. We have real-time information on what is happening on the industry. We are speaking directly with the SMEs and with the large companies every day, every moment, and so we really are connected with the needs and the situation, and we adapt our activities to the conditions that they are living. And if they are suffering disruptions and look for solutions, they contact us. And so we are helping them every day in a very deep knowledge to solve many of those difficulties. So this is one of the key aspects of our success on supporting them. That's why we have been able to play a role in the past on the current crisis. We have proven to be strong and resilient partners, but we are also, I would say, learning from the experience, and we are growing capacities. And we are growing capacities, for example, on being able to support our companies on reduction of energy consumption, or implementing new circular economy circuits, whatever is needed in the current context or in the future context. We are probably the best and quickest market sensors. I just spoke about it. That we have been contributing to the analysis of the disruptions at the European level that has been made by the ECCP, the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, with a strong also collaboration from the EU Industrial Forum. We can help to really extract the valid information from the data. There is a strong difference between data and information, and we help to interpret and to engage the SMEs in that interpretation of the data that is coming from, not only from the survey, but from other sources. So we are there, and we can bring valuable knowledge to the drafting of the recovery plans and the current plans that are being defined, meaning, for example, the transition pathways for the different industrial ecosystems. We are working to support our Ukrainian colleagues. We were, I would say, thanks also to the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, we were able to very quickly link with the Ukrainian cluster community at the beginning of the war, with Alex and with Olga Trofimova and others. I think that they are doing an excellent job from their side, but we are there to support them. We created together with them the EU Cluster Support Forum in the ECCP. Is still working, is still there just to receive not needs and offers, to try to link those needs and offers. And we are also helping to define other projects and initiatives together with them. We are been discussing lately about how to support the creation of the SMEs, the growth of the SMEs, the linkages with the cluster members across Europe or other entities, other companies, even those that are not involved in the cluster community. And we really plan to grow on that way. So thank you, and Marek, back to you.
Thank you very much, Antonio, for this overview. I think it will be very, very helpful and useful for all the Danube clusters who are still not on European Cluster Collaboration Platform to join the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. But without further delay, let me introduce Alexander Jurczak, who will present the Ukrainian clusters stand where we are, as we would like to link European clusters with Ukrainian clusters and in geographical proximity, particularly from the Danube region. So, Alexander, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity to present Ukrainian Cluster Alliance. Do you see my screen?
Yes, it works. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay. So a few words about who we are and what we are doing in Ukraine in cluster collaboration. So we were created in March of this year. In fact, cluster movement exists since a long time in Ukraine, but the through the cluster were not, let's say, united, organized, and since March we act like unique cluster association, and we are supported by European Cluster Collaboration Platform, by European Cluster Alliance. Thanks a lot for the support, because from the first days of the war in Ukraine, we've got this support. And this is very important for us to survive, to be better organized, and to be better integrated into European value chain. So today we unite 37 clusters, almost 2,000 enterprise, and we have 12 memorandum of understanding with mainly with European partner. We act in all Ukrainian regions and in many industry. In fact, you see what we industry we unite on this screen. So from the first weeks of the war, we were concentrated on so-called critical industries. So critical industries is, of course, it's about critical infrastructure and energy, but it's also about food, textile. So it's about basic goods for population, but also for the army. And we had from the first month, very good example is how cluster can contribute to economy, but also to other needs of population. For example, in the textile industry, you've got a very good example of cooperation in Khmelnytsky and other region cluster, where they got a big order from state and from the territorial defense to produce some clothes and in food industry, in furniture industry, we also have very good example how to contribute to cluster and SME internationalization. These clusters are very active in export activity. They help SMEs to go on a big trade fair, and cluster management is very active in that. And in engineering automation machinery, we are active to contribute support of critical, especially critical infrastructure, but also how to go, in fact, how to continue this way in European Union, especially digital and green transition. So many clusters work on that. We also developed some new direction, like we try to speed up industrial outsource in especially engineering, every work which can be done remotely. So this is just a few examples how we organize and what we do. So of course, clusters have many needs, especially needs number one is about order taking, about creating new job to support our SMEs. And of course, market in Ukraine was decreased significantly in all main industry or main sectors. That's why our main response to this challenge is about faster integration into international value chain, especially European value chain. So this is strategy of internationalization. So this year, especially last 6 months, we've done a lot of international meetings, mainly online, but also offline. You see on the picture, this picture from Istanbul Forum is a big investment and business forum. Was led by International Trade Council, supported by International Chamber of Commerce. We were co-organizers the same days, the same business forum. Just these days, this week is in Estonia, Tallinn. We also participate in it. And there were many other meetings, offline meetings. I'm sitting today in Budapest. Yesterday there was a big conference, I4MS. This is conference of Horizon Europe program about digitalization of industrial SME. So we are very open for international cooperation, inter-regional cooperation, including Danube regions. And there are some examples of cooperation. For example, in August, we created consortium of European Innovation Council for the call of support Ukrainian startups. It was really very good initiative of the European Commission, how to support Ukrainian startups. And we created a consortium of 11 partners, and I think I have special slide. Yeah, I have special slide on that, including 6 countries of European Union. I cannot say, of course, yet organization, because there is no result. But in fact, this is example of how we can cooperate, and we very open for cooperation, also with a country of Danube regions. Another good example with country of Danube initiative is Czech Republic. So maybe this is one of our major initiatives, Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, to create bilateral or multilateral agenda in advanced manufacturing. We started from this sector, as the presence of our cluster in this domain is maybe the strongest. So we started, in fact, cooperation with Czech partner last year, but this year we started to plan something more sustainable, more long term, and in June we started the preparation of business mission to Czech Republic of Ukrainian delegation. So it was oriented to big trade fair in Brno. So it was just 2 weeks ago, 6th of October. We were in Brno, almost 20 people. We made a big Ukrainian-Czech conference, trying to find the touch point in advanced manufacturing. And finally, we signed a memorandum with 4 Czech partner, with Cluster Industry 4.0, Innovation Agency Czech Inno, also National Cluster of Smart City, and Cybersecurity Hub. So we plan with all these organization exchange for the next year. So including there are already 3 big events already planned, and of course we started intensive B2B exchange between our countries. So I think it's a good example of inter-regional cooperation where we target special needs which are common for European countries, and in fact, we can go the same way with Danube region. Few slides about also another proposal we prepared it for international partner, for European partner. It's top 10 proposal Ukrainian Cluster Alliance in advanced manufacturing, and it's very linked to national program for recovery of Ukraine. So I think it's the relevance to Danube initiative. It's about relevance, because when we say that European value chain should be much more resilient to new shock, to new crisis. So Ukraine, I think it's has the best how to say, unfortunately, but it's experiment fields where we can test the strengths and the resilience of common value chain and for value chain which anyway related between them. I mean, Ukrainian value chain, European value chain, and there are many chains which are interrelated, interconnected, as was said today about, for example, in the raw materials, but also in many other fields, for example, cybersecurity or manufacturing and so on. This our program of top 10 proposal is about concrete project. I mentioned it about outsourcing industrial engineering, but what is important for us is how to propose a new model, new chain, new ecosystem around critical infrastructure and energy. So because you know that today we are really attacked by Russian, not just missiles, rockets, but also drones, and every object of critical infrastructure today under threats. And for the moment, our response is very classical. So it's we can say this old model, but that's what Antonio said, that we try to build some more resilient ecosystem, how to ensure faster and more effective response to new such alarm situation. So tomorrow we'll have this meeting with our representative of critical infrastructure, trying to find maybe a new way of reaction and to help them. So this is just a few examples of our initiative. And coming back to Danube regions, Danube initiatives, we started since July. We have a regular communication with Moldova, and thanks to our Moldova partners, because they engage many other countries of South Europe, like Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, and so on. So this is discussion about smart regions, smart cities, smart villages, which is part of Moldovan government program. And we already had some common meeting about with engagement of our clusters. You know that there are 4 Ukrainian regions of Odessa, Chernivtsi, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Zakarpattia, which are allowed to participate in a recent call. in November of the Danube initiative. This is mainly we talk about smart region, how to make set up this interregional cooperation and to make our region smarter. Another topic with Moldavian, but also other colleagues, is about agri-food and smart specialization project. It also can be done because in the Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, we have many expert group and we have good experience providing or supporting smart specialization projects in our country. And we had already some exchange with European country about that. And of course, what I said about advanced manufacturing, it also a very important topic for us. I already put an example of partnership with Czech Republic. I know that these days our partner from Czech Republic, they talk with Hungarian people, a Hungarian partner, how to set up this maybe partnership with Ukrainian clusters in the Danube initiative, and we can imagine some others partnership for that. So once again, we are open for any kind of collaboration. We have let's say choice of clusters to be involved and choice of different direction. Well, briefly, that's all from me.
Alexander, thank you very much. And you are the good example that actually in the crisis, the networking is accelerated. People are now growing the dynamics of cluster development in Ukraine. And I think this is a good occasion to liaise very closely to all clusters in Danube. And Gerd, I think you are the person who is the best place to discuss about this. If you can, I mean, as far as I know, your presentation is linked very much to supply and value chains and disruptions, which is how we can liaise the both communities from Ukraine and Danube in order to deal with disruptions. So, Gerd, please, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thanks a lot, and sorry for dropping out for a moment. So if you can allow me to share the screen. So far, I'm not allowed to share the screen. So if you can... Yeah. However, for the time being, yes, let me focus a bit more on the value chain topic. I mean, this is always the case. Thanks a lot. And okay, thanks for this. So yes, we talked a lot about clusters and all these topics, but what we realized is that everyone is talking about value chain development, but if we are a bit self-critical, not really much is done, neither in the Danube region nor in many other regions. So what we realize is that there is still a challenge that SMEs get support in entering new value chains or being part of existing value chains, which are partly broken. If we go to the next slide, I would like to explain a bit more how it really, what is the current challenge we face. Can we go to the next slide? Is it possible? Because I cannot share my screen.
Is this one? Can you see it?
No, I do not see the next one. I just see the opening slide.
I just see the opening slide, so it doesn't move. Let me.
Yeah. Okay. Let me, because there's
a technical problem.
If you go one back, it would be perfect.
This one?
Yes, exactly. So when we talk about value chain development, we really have to distinguish, thanks a lot, whether a value chain is broken or whether a value chain has to be developed. What we have seen typically in COVID time was that there are suppliers, there are manufacturers, there are distributors and retailers and buyers, but so that means we have all actors along the value chain, but the connection is broken. And if we go to the next slide, in the Ukraine war, thanks a lot, we have another phenomenon. We have suppliers and manufacturers, but the buyers cannot access. So that means here we have to support value chain development in an entirely different way. And if we go to the next slide, because we all talk about bioeconomy, we have to develop entire new value chains. That means we might have a biomass, we might have a buyer, but we don't know supplier, we don't know manufacturers, and so on. So that means that we really have to much better consider what we intend to do. And only if we understand when it comes to value chain development or resilience, then we can really act accordingly. And that is sometimes overlooked, especially on policy level, when they said we have to develop new value chains or to make them more resilient. It very much depends on the challenge, and it very much depends on the subject. So that led, and in the next slide we can move further on. So that means we really have to distinguish between the development of new ones, the reconstruction, and the resilience. Having this in mind, the Baden-Württemberg government set up the so-called Danube Alliance, which I'm currently presenting, to have a new tool in place to really support value chain development or optimization. It is not a competition to clusters and digital hubs and so on. It is more to raise the attention and the capacity to much better support SMEs in getting back embedded into value chains. So that means the next slide we come a bit to the point. We really have to focus on new support schemes to support hands-on, very practical value chain development. And if I take a critical view on my region where I'm coming from Baden-Württemberg, we have a lot of support programs on innovation, on skills, on digitalization, and so on. But we don't have any very targeted tool to support value chain development, as it always said. So this was understood by our government, the Ministry for Economy. And in the next slide, we set up at the beginning of 2021 the so-called Danube Alliance, which is a flagship project under Priority Area 8 for the Danube region, where partners of us, you can see here the consortium, but also many other partners from the Danube region, really started to find new tools, new ways, together with cluster management, for example, to better understand how is a value chain structured or designed, how to analyze, and how to make very, very targeted support. So this initiative was started beginning of 2021, and it is still ongoing. The approach we are following is shown on the next slide, that it is very important at the beginning really to identify value chains which are most appropriate to support. For example, the automotive value chain is so well established, it's so much dominated by the big companies. I guess these value chains, you cannot do much. It is really driven by big industries. But there are many other relevant value chains which goes across the Danube region, where it makes sense to pay a little more attention. Next one is to really understand and to predict what's happening. And on the next slide, we see a very nice example, and we don't talk about high-tech. For example, we identified the miscanthus case. You can see here it's one of the fastest growth biomass, which is very well useful for decentralized bioenergy, which is, of course, unfortunately high on the agenda. The issue is that we do have miscanthus all over. You can produce in Ukraine, in Romania, in Bulgaria, whatever, but it is still not used so far. And everyone is asking, why the hell is this not happening? Because everyone is saying this is the best plant for developing decentralized biogas. So what we did, and you can see it on the next slide, we took a very detailed look on this value or supply chain. And if you take a very detailed look, you can see here, it's a bit more complex than it as always looks like. You see all the different nodes. And what came out is that, yes, we have a certain supply chain on the left side when it comes to cultivation and harvesting. And we have a demand because there are many potential buyers who are interested. But in between, it is absolutely disconnected. And that was also one of the reasons why this such a miscanthus bio value chain has never been really functional. And it came out that there's some technology is missing, partners are missing, partners do not talk to each other. And here you can see that all the typical questions which are day-to-day business of cluster managements came up. So we analyzed, next step, we also digitalized this value chain, next slide, to really better understand how it works. And here we can see that we digitalized all the nodes. So that means we were able to better predict, for example, what does it mean if the harvesting cost go up 5%, for example, what results in the end price of the biogas production, for example. So by digitalizing this value chain, gave us a possibility which determinant we can optimize, and if we optimize a certain determinant or node, what is the overall impact on the entire value chain. So that really helps all actors involved to really understand, and only then we were able to start to optimize accordingly, which will now be shown on the next slide. So not going too much into detail, is what is the lessons learned is we really have to dig very deep on how to understand value chain development or make it more resilient. And we have to build up a lot of capacity in this regard. And my final slide will have a bit more self-critical view. You know very well, and thanks for the introduction, that of course my heart is beating for cluster development. But what we realized in the Danube region is that most cluster managers are not prepared to really help companies on value chain development. The reason is that we were always pushed for many years. We have to do innovation, we have to do skill development and so on, which is of course important, but it's not connected to value chain development. So that means over the last years before the crisis started, cluster managers put a lot of different focus at the center of their work. And now we have to redirect with all these crises. That means we have a lot of capacity and competence missing. Awareness is not really very high. So the Danube Alliance, and we are happy to continue within these activities over the next year, is really trying to also sensitize cluster management to offer even more targeted support in the Danube region for SMEs to really improve the value chain development as we always pretend to do. Yeah, so that is a bit more critical point, but it also means that we can really, if we focus on value chain development, we can also intensify this cross-regional cooperation, which is Danube macro region all about. Thanks a lot for giving me the floor to share our experiences. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. And Alexander, Antonio, EUSDR, and Kuba as well. I think we will, unfortunately, will not get the minister from Ukraine on board today, it looks like. But so let us just brainstorm a bit, because we have, as rightly pointed by Antonio, we have about 360 clusters in this in the countries of, in broader sense, of Danube regions. And then Alexander showed that they have very much as well clusters in automation, in textiles. And what you, Gert, was saying, the building of supply and value chains. I think this all goes together. But what is maybe lacking, but I would like to have your voice on our side as well, to have efforts from clusters and from our European coordination point of view, how to make this link happen. Yeah, because it looks like we all now have lessons learned from experience that we need to concentrate on supply and value chains, but still there are practical ways to do so. And I think, Alexander, maybe may I ask you first, because you started to have effective relations with bilateral memorandum of understanding and so on, how you would see the most effective way of bringing the collaboration between Ukrainian industry with Danube or EU industry in practical terms, and then later if you can refer to this. And Antonio, because you are covering the All European Cluster Alliance, how we can stimulate through European Cluster Collaboration Platform this effort. And then Kuba, I would like to ask you to have your voice on this. And then all of this we will, of course, transfer directly to all our clusters, 360 clusters we have in Danube, because I think this is very much work to do to integrate this supply chain. So, Alexander, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Meyer, for last presentation. It's really very, very important for us. My answer to your question, Marek, it's mainly what we see and at the glance. It's interregional project. It's instrument of corridor. That help us because we already built such corridor in innovative ecosystem. For example, building transfer and linking digital hub from with Europe, especially with Polish digital hubs, is one example. Another, what I said about Czech Republic, but we plan to repeat such bilateral agenda with Poland, with Lithuania, other country. Any kind of interregional project in given industry, like especially focus in so-called critical industry for us, Ukraine, but it can be also relevant for the Danube initiative, are really helpful for us, and they speed up development of a cluster and as a member, and of course it can be helpful to build the link you mentioned. But going deeper, I would emphasize maybe also the necessity to better understand own, at the regional level, at every country is very changed. That's why such analysis tools, how to analyze value chain, how to analyze and to see, to quicker, to faster realize the gap, the disruption is very, very important for us. In Ukraine is a typical case how such analysis, such tools are important, because frankly speaking, we don't understand situation in many segments in our country, just because first it's not just classical disruption like COVID, but also migration of many clusters, because many our people, of course, but also SME enterprise were relocated from east to west, from south. So this is less internally replaced enterprise cluster. So we don't have statistics. So it's really very difficult to understand, all these gaps. If we, of course, take supply chain, maybe it's easier. We can say that, yeah, there are problems on the border, on the custom, and so on. There are some things, some stuff at a glance. But if you go deeper and try to analyze some, economic statistics, some really understanding where there are gaps in the value chain, it becomes really very, very, very difficult. So once again, such tools are really important for us. I think it's important also to analyze, interregional, or what Antonio mentioned, cross ecosystem, cross-regional collaboration.
Thank you, Alexander. I see Gert was lost connection, but I think he will join. But in the meantime, Antonio, if you can refer.
Thank you, Marek. Yeah, I think that we have several levels for sure. We need to deepen our the use of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform as a tool to interconnect our clusters, communities, the Ukrainian cluster with us. And I hope we are launching very soon also the new forums, where the Ukrainian clusters could be part of the actors that will help us to identify needs and opportunities. For sure, the current forum is for that, but we need to improve the flow of information between us. No, Alexander was giving us very, very good examples of how they are participating in the current in some current European projects. We need to strengthen that participation, to invite them to present their needs and capacities, because they have very strong capacities in the digitalization, in advanced manufacturing, and we need to know about them and to take advantage of those capacities. So this is something that we need to explore. Which kind of calls and new calls from the European Commission also are open for integrating the cluster and the Ukrainian businesses in the consortia, and how can we help them to integrate? But it's not only about public funding. It's about investment from our companies. I know, for example, of some Spanish companies working on construction that have now building and furniture that have now factories, plants in Ukraine, and they are very interested in not only in keeping them but growing there, because they have this sense of responsibility. They know the society, they know the capacities, and we should think on how to support, how to reduce the risk, the business risks, how to facilitate the exchange of goods, the market rules, how to encourage our companies to participate on those. So I think that we still need to think together and create new opportunities. Alex mentioned before the consortia that presented the proposal for helping the startups in growing in the European level, growing on Ukraine, but also creating relationship with the European businesses. That will be, for example, an excellent project to work together. Because that will support with important quantity of public funding, that will support our common relationships. So there are many areas that we need to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. And actually, I see Gert is trying to connect, but it seems that in Baden-Württemberg there is an issue with internet at this stage. I think that there's. It would be good to hear the voice from the representative of the whole set of Danube clusters. But okay, we while waiting maybe for Gert, hoping that he joins. Kuba, I think you might have some ideas as well how we can.
Thank you very much. I think I'm still, let's say, a bit in a learning phase. So anyway, I have been introduced to the cluster community, in the beginning of the year. But what I have seen, and that shows a great degree of dynamism. I think what we are facing now is that as a result of this crisis and war, European economy will change. It's now in the process of profound change that it will, we are arriving at a new reality, with all those things that I have been talking about, the supply chains are being reshaped, sometimes in a quite fundamental manner. And I think that and the position even of a Danube region, I mean, Ukraine emerging after the war, I mean, it would be a completely new quality. I mean, from the point of view of, let's say, overall European perspective. And that means that there is a first phase now where we are in the midst of a crisis, of the struggle, trying to adjust, and clusters can provide for I said a glue, but also, in certain niches, coming up with innovative solutions. I think what would be important is that this is being more seen and recognized by, I think someone has a microphone, so my voice. Okay. I think that probably would need to be also more recognized by the, let's say, national level and European level decision makers, so that we have a good alignment between this, let's say, big strategic processes, just given a whole range of measures on energy. But then, of course, it needs to be then applied and implemented on the ground. So clusters will play a big role. And then I think looking towards the future, I mean, one day we will be through the crisis, and I think one of these new amazing opportunities would be rebuilding of Ukraine. And I think, again, clusters could be, among others, could be seen as kind of first movers. So what you are building now, it's in a way building a foundation of an intensive, I would say, mesh of interactions, contacts, ultimately trust that is so essential. That would be the foundation on which, let's say, hopefully, in the future, an ambitious, investment projects, business partnership projects could be built.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I thank you very much for this. And again, I noticed you managed to. You had a break a bit, but just to tell you, if we have, we see that we have disruptions in supply chains. At the same, we have proximity between Danube and Ukraine, and what Kuba was saying, this collaboration actually is going to have something more than only disruptions, but as well long-term integration of the companies from EU and Ukraine. From your knowledge of the Danube clusters perspective, what we should do at this moment in order to bring them on board? I mean, the Ukrainian companies, and as well to integrate them into our supply chain, in order to help in green transition, digital transition, but basically in disruptions as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Sorry for dropping out. I have to check what happened. So I guess, yes, let me correct you a bit. We don't need to bring Ukraine companies in. We have to bring them in again. For me, a big learning was, for example, our aviation industry in Germany is heavily suffering because components were originally manufactured in Ukraine. We have a shortage of wooden pallets because many of them were produced in Ukraine. So that means before we have well-established value chains starting in Ukraine, going through the Danube region and finishing there. So that means we have to redo this again. That means what a concrete idea is, what kind of value chain we can identify where we have a shortage of supply and where Ukraine SMEs or also clusters can play a role, that we really start cooperation of different countries among specific supply chains. And yes, we know that there is a shortage of sunflower oil and of course of many others, but aviation and wooden pellets, sorry, I was not aware of that, but it's important. That means there are value chains we can have to re-establish and make sure that our Ukraine partners are embedded again, because what is a big concern is very often if you're once out, it's very hard to enter again. And that has to be avoided by ever means. And here clusters can play a very decisive role. Okay,
thank you very much. Let me summarize this discussion. And unfortunately, we couldn't have the minister from Ukraine. Of course, circumstances that we cannot foresee. I would like very much thank you, Kuba, for giving this voice of the European Commission, and Antonio, Alexandre, and Gerd, you. I think this is only the kickoff of the collaboration, because what it shows that we have big potential of collaboration of actors in the Danube region, which are clusters as intermediaries. We see that we need to work on bringing in specific supply chains, value chains. So I think we might have some work to do in order to integrate, to organize, for example, matchmaking so that we can bring on board the clusters and their members together. And I think if you allow me to conclude, there's this kind of need would require from us some actions. So we will further strengthen this collaboration. And I think Gerd, Antonio, and Alexandre, I think we need to work further and bring this communities together. And I hope with all this disruptions, war disruptions, which can finish soon, or despite this, or because of them, we need even to strengthen the connections. So let us work. I think we might come with some proposals for this together with the Slovakian and Ukrainian presidency of the Danube Forum. To organize something like matchmaking, and we have the instrument of clusters, mid-regions, for example, bringing together closer. So in this context, I think we will further work. Thank you very much for your participation. These recordings we will share with all the Danube clusters, the Danube regions, so that they to raise awareness about the potential and opportunities of collaboration between clusters of these regions. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Thank you.